Welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest-running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. 12 and a half years strong. Got a great Eagles-Cowboys preview show coming your way with our good friend from the bloggingtheboys.com website. He's been coming on for many, many years. So very gracious and grateful, I should say, to have him taking the time here, the one and only RJ Ochoa. RJ, thanks so much, buddy. Really appreciate you, my friend.
Jeff, it's great to be with you. Hope the family's well. Hope you're you never sleep, from what I can tell. So I hope you have found a chance to get a siesta and that you're ready for the holidays.
I appreciate it. Yes. And, the holidays are right around the corner. That means football is going to be in full force, especially during the Thanksgiving holiday season. Eagles and Cowboys doing some interesting things. It's going to be an interesting matchup this week. These division matchups always are interesting. It doesn't matter what the records are for each of these teams. However, I want to get into, and we've been talking about on our Opposition Territory pods here, RJ, like right off the bat, talking about strengths and weaknesses of the Eagles opposing team. So I was hoping we could get into what the biggest strength of the Cowboys has been as we're heading into this week 12 matchup, and what the biggest weakness is as well. Let's start with the biggest strength on this Cowboys team. What is that? And, what should we be looking out for this week 12 matchup here?
Well, apologies, because we've happened to have done this at mail delivery time around my house, and my dog Bear.
We love the dogs.
Yeah, he's pretty pissed off about it. But when the Amazon packages come, he can be quiet. That being said, I think that we are in a moment where it's almost universally agreed upon that Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the NFC East. And that's not career resume or anything, but in terms of how they're playing, I think we all agree, which is a very strange thing.
Yes.
And that's where the strength starts for the Cowboys. And much has been made about the trade for George Pickens and whatnot. And he's obviously been incredible. So he has amplified what was already an incredible strength between Dak and CeeDee. And this season has seen the emergence or reemergence, you could argue, of Jake Ferguson, who went to maybe the best Big Ten school. Who knows? I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, I don't know about
that. And the offensive line that was young and being remodeled has held up. And so the offense is without a doubt. They did have some stumbles when they lost to Denver and then Arizona on that Monday night before the bye. But other than that, they have been, not just the strength, but elite. Among the NFL's very, very, very best.
They've been so competitive. They've been so competitive.
Yes. One, they've had to be, just because just to give a bit of a spoiler here, the defense has been far and away the weakness, but it has undergone some significant changes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Dak is definitely the answer to that question.
And the weakness is that defense that you're talking about. I don't know if you want to expound upon that. Again, we talk about strengths and weaknesses of the Eagles opposing teams every week right out of the gate. If you can get into specifically what we're going to be seeing in terms of that weakness, where the Eagles offense may be able to really capitalize on that weak Cowboys defense.
Yeah, it's I think that I know we've talked about this, but it's important to acknowledge that everything that's weak about the Cowboys was almost self-inflicted by the front office. Ever since they lost that playoff game to the Packers, it's been either willful ignorance or outright self-sabotage. And so they watch this defense wither away. And it starts with the fact that Dan Quinn left for the Washington job now after 2 years ago. And they left, they're still feeling the ramifications of letting Mike McCarthy go into last year in this lame duck year. And they brought in Mike Zimmer for what was obviously just a 1-year situation, and then hired a new head coach and a new defensive coordinator. So they've had all this change. They traded away Micah Parsons, and they are inordinately not talented, or have been not talented. They had the worst linebacker play I've ever seen them have through the course of not just my professional career, but my life.
It's been astonishing. Yeah.
Right. So the first trade they executed was for Logan Wilson, which was, maybe arguably the better trade in terms of return on investment. They gave up a 7th-round pick for him. So that seemingly will help. They got DeMarvion Overshown back, on Monday night against Las Vegas. Obviously, they landed Quinnen Williams. They have Savon Ravel playing now. He made his NFL debut. He's their 3rd-round pick. He was coming back from a torn ACL last year. So, quantitatively, they have changed. So it is difficult to say what they will be this Sunday. I don't mean to ride the fence, but they've been so poor because they haven't had these guys. They haven't had these players. They've just been dealing with these cast-offs in the third year of a third defensive coordinator. Not that it's his third year, but there's been so many significant changes and withering of talent that it was just too much. And I suppose if you wanted to argue this as well, the offense is so good. And so the offense scores so often and so quickly that they're back on the field failing all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting that we have this dichotomy here in the NFC East and in the NFC in general, when you have the top team in the NFC being the Philadelphia Eagles struggling from an offensive perspective, the narrative around Philadelphia and this Eagles team and the personnel, the front office, what's actually happening behind the scenes. I wanted to get your perspective as, you know, somebody on the quote outside of things here. I mean, it's no secret that this Eagles offense just isn't running on all cylinders, even with the talent that they have at all these skilled positions. Eagles Nation very well aware of that the offensive line is part of this and a big part of this from an inconsistent play standpoint. The offensive play calling is not only sketchy, but it is absolutely predictable. The Eagles offense is the most predictable offense in the entire NFL. How do you, RJ, view this Eagles offense in terms of this narrative heading into this Sunday game here? Because I think it's interesting to hear what a quote outsider's perspective is on what's happening with this Eagles offense. What are your thoughts here?
I've talked a lot about this with my colleague Brandon Gotten, who I know is a friend of the pod as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's astonishing that AJ Brown. I mean, we all understand what that umbrella covers.
Yeah.
And we all again universally agree that what he's doing is detrimental to the sake of the team. But what's amazing to me is we all also universally agree with him. Like that's an incredible thing that AJ is so clearly, you know, objectively in the wrong to pout or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think he has a right to voice his opinion, obviously, but that's where the conversation goes, is that he is right. I think this is very awkward. It must be very awkward for points of leadership within the Eagles, because if you have to paint a primary culprit, it's Jalen Hurts, and he's the quarterback, he's the face, and he's the reigning Super Bowl MVP. So how can you have to have some level of protection with regards to him, for lack of a better word. That isn't to say they're coddling him, but I think he's clearly the handicap on the offense, outside of the play calling, obviously, and whatnot. But the strange thing is he has these moments, since a lot of them are in the playoffs, where he does show up, and can you bank on that? That would be foolish, but they're still winning games, but the offense is so poor and they've been outgained in all these games. So I certainly love the drama, and I'm a fan of it. And if I can manifest anything in a very different way, but somewhat similar, it feels similar to Carson Wentz, and the way that fallout, began and transpired, because I do wonder how players like AJ Brown feel, how it must feel to know you're so wildly talented, but that you have this limit, and to look even within your own division and see someone like Dak Prescott, who is so willing to be aggressive and whatnot. And you could argue that Dak has to be that way because he has no help around him. And so Dak is to me kind of like Batman, right? Like he has had to forge his own weaponry. He has had to figure out how to make this work. Whereas, Jalen Hurts is like Iron Man. Like he's stepping into the suit that does everything for him. And that's, again, I think that Jalen, I don't mean any of this to sound negative. I think he's done everything he's been asked to do. I just think over this run, his career, the Eagles identified a lot of market inefficiencies that they could capitalize on. And they've done so heroically, to the point that they, almost won multiple Super Bowls. But I think we're reaching a point where that has run its course, and it's now time to either adapt, or for the main, cog in the machine, which is your quarterback, to do something different. And it doesn't appear that he's able to.
That is a very interesting assessment too, because I think for some within Eagles Nation, it is so tough for them to really see and understand where he is at in his career and what he's actually given the organization. I mean, just even in our contemporary history, not just 2 Super Bowl appearances, but an actual Super Bowl championship and being the MVP and what that actually means from a long-term perspective in terms of your place on the team, in terms of how you are viewed even outside the realm of Philadelphia. So it's a very interesting point of view. And I wish we had more time to actually dive into that.
Well,
However, yeah, go ahead.
Well, just quickly, because I think
Yeah.
an outsider's perspective is interesting there. I have always felt like the first Super Bowl was a little not that it was fake, but it had to be like the most awkward way for your team to win a Super Bowl
It
because
was magical. Like it was magical.
it was
Yeah.
magical, but to
Yeah.
your point, you don't have that. I mean, Nick Foles was not the quarterback. I
The
mean,
guy,
he had the match. So Jalen
Yeah.
is that guy. Like you
Yeah.
finally have the front man for the group, and so I agree that his place in franchise history is very unique because of that.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, let's get into some matchups before we get to our break. Want to dive into this Eagles defense. My gosh, they have been on fire these past few weeks here. Arguably, they look like a Super Bowl caliber defense, RJ. How do you see the Eagles offensive line? I'm sorry, the Cowboys offensive line, because you were talking about them before. It has been a strength of this Cowboys team. How do you see that Cowboys offensive line matching up against this Eagles defensive front that has been absolutely dominant week after week here?
Yeah, I think that's where the game is often won and lost for the
Yeah.
Cowboys against the Eagles. And the most intense game they've played in recent history was that Christmas Eve game in 2022, the Gardner Minshew game, and that was, I think, before the Eagles realized that blitzing Dak Prescott was just asking to be beat. And so,
Yep.
I mean, Dak is arguably the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz because he's such a quick processor and he's got receivers who can capitalize in those situations. And so I think that's the challenge is, and if anyone is suited to win that, it is Philadelphia, to win without blitzing, to win without sending extra pressure. And if they
Yep.
can, and it would stand to reason that they're certainly capable of doing so, that's how Philadelphia not only wins this game, but I think wins this game running away. But if they do have to send extra pressure, that's where other things open up and Dak's able to capitalize, which we've seen him do against other teams, not just the Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to take a break here, folks. And again, RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com at RJ Ochoa on the Twitter/X. And you want some other social platforms out there, buddy?
Yeah, well, Instagram as well is RJ Ochoa, and so is Threads residually. Somebody had that on TikTok. That's what the joke I use all the time. So I had to go with RJ Ochoa. It's really lame, but I'm also using LinkedIn more. So if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, let's mix it up. Let's get a little strange.
Very good. If you are watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe to the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show. Also, you can hit that bell to be notified when we post new videos. We're also on various social media sites as well. Instagram, Twitter/X. I'm over on TikTok at Mr. Jeff Warren. Just search out the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show or myself on various social media sites. We are there. So we're going to be taking a quick break here, folks. And when we get back, got a lot more matchup talk with this Week 12 game coming up. Philadelphia Eagles against the Cowboys. Stick with us. All right, we are back again with our good friend RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com. Great SB Nation site. Been doing great work over there for many, many years. As we're continuing to discuss this preview of the Eagles and Cowboys game coming up here, I want to dive into the Eagles quote offensive attack, quote offensive attack, and what we might see for the Cowboys defense as well. A weak Cowboys defense against a weak Eagles offensive attack. Look, 3rd and long has been a major issue for this Eagles offense over the past few games that they have played, mainly all season. I mean, I can't tell you, and you probably talked about it with Brandon Lee Gouton, our mutual friend here of our podcasts and our platforms. 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s. It is astonishing how the Eagles are going 3rd and long all the time throughout these games. So I'm wondering, RJ, how do you expect the Cowboys defense to possibly capitalize on this struggling Eagles offense here?
I think that's the key, right? Is putting them in those holes and just kind of letting them self-destruct. And I would offer they haven't really been able to do that in recent matchups against them. And certainly last year was really broken for Dallas, as I've told you. But we're still so early in the Quinnen Williams time. I mean, this is his second game on the team in his first game at home. And so early in the season, the Cowboys were getting destroyed. Every quarterback was just having a field day through the air. In fact, I made a joke a lot that it said a lot of negative about Jalen Hurts that he wasn't able to do that, but he didn't have to
Yeah.
in the opener because he was running all over the Cowboys. And so I think I would not be shocked if Jalen picks up 3 different 3rd and longs on the ground. Like that's how this is mitigated. But the presence of Quinnen Williams along the interior does change that. And I would say, we were always and always have been jealous of Fletcher Cox. I mean, just because the Cowboys have never had that. They've in not only in games against the Eagles, but against anybody, they have just that has been the highest point of weakness for them is the defensive interior. And so I'm kind of just curious. I'm curious what that looks like. Does that mitigate somebody like Jalen Hurts and his mobility? That's truly, I know I mentioned the trenches for the Cowboys on offense, but I mean, if the Cowboys are able to successfully defend 3rd and I'd even go more optimistic from our perspective and say 3rd and 6, things like that, then they really can win. I mean, and it would not be shocking, and I think you would agree. There's a script, I should say, to where after 3 or 4 different possessions, the Cowboys are up to like a 17-0 lead, and then it's just kind of hold on for dear life, and that might be enough.
Yeah. And look, the reality is that this Eagles offensive line is banged up in a lot of ways. And I think with Quinnen Williams coming in as well and being able to overpower some of the depth on this Eagles offensive line, it's definitely a storyline that we need to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, for a long time, I dismissed Lane Johnson's greatness because he was a right tackle. I'm sure that's things, you've
We've
run
talked
into.
about that before. He's one of my favorites.
and so I always felt he was very good, but not just this franchise changer. I just didn't believe that was possible. I think if the Eagles build a statue with regards to all success from 2017 ongoing, it should be of Lane Johnson. It shouldn't be of Jalen Hurts or Nick Foles or anybody. I know he has one, but it should be of Lane Johnson. And it's startling from your perspective how significantly worse they're not just like average without Lane Johnson, they're horrible without Lane Johnson in some respects. So I to spoil things, I am picking the Cowboys, and that's honestly maybe the biggest reason why. Not just the Eagles offense is floundering and the Cowboys offense is playing well or Quinnen Williams, whatever, but that is such and has been such a significant detail. And if Cam Jurgens doesn't play, that obviously lends even in more so to Quinnen Williams. So I have really never been confident in the Cowboys defensive front against the Eagles offensive line, but this lends itself to that degree.
Absolutely. And look, we all know that from game to game in the NFL, doesn't matter what teams we're watching, who's on our screens, there are always some sneaky players that end up performing well from game to game. So I'm wondering, RJ, are there a couple sneaky Cowboys players that we really need to keep our eyes on heading into this game that might not necessarily be on our radar in terms of how well they may perform against this Eagles team? What are your thoughts here?
I would say defensively for the Cowboys, I always say it's difficult to be underrated as a Cowboy just because of how much attention they get. But it's Donovan Ezuraku, who's from your neck of the woods, generally speaking, their 2nd-round pick out of BC. He has really come along, and they've obviously needed somebody too after the Micah trade and whatnot. But so much attention is given now to Quinnen Williams and even to Kenny Clark because he was a part of the trade. But Donovan has arguably turned into their best pass rusher. So I would not be stunned to see him have success and just people be like, who's this guy? Yeah, I'm not familiar with his game. Offensively, I mentioned him, but Jake Ferguson. So much attention is given to Dak and CD and now Pickens and even Javonte Williams getting a lot of pop with the season he's having. But Jake Ferguson has 7 touchdowns to this point, which is just...
He's one of the best tight ends in the league, and I just don't think the guy's getting his due from an overall perspective.
Right, and so I think that he's benefited, obviously, everyone has, from George Pickens' presence, and so he's kind of the trash can that or the garbage disposal that catches all the leftover work and leftover statistics. He is 2 touchdowns away from tying the single-season record for a tight end for the Cowboys. And I should mention, while I'm here on that note, Dak Prescott needs 160 passing yards to pass Tony Romo for the most in franchise history.
Ooh, so all right.
That is likely, with all due respect, it's such a low number, likely going down this Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, RJ, before we let you go, we end our pregame preview shows here on our Opposition Territory podcast every week by talking about one thing that each team is going to need to hit on for a win. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. What's the one thing the Cowboys are going to need to hit on for a win against the Eagles this week?
I think you have to, I know I use the term self-destruct, but you have to let the Eagles get in their own head. I think it's strange how all
And
due
they
res-
will.
Right. Well, I do mean this as I always have with all due respect, but it's strange how insecure the Eagles are. For a team that's 8-2, that's defending Super Bowl champions. I mean, so I think just kind of letting that happen, and the Cowboys are pretty well accustomed to insecurity happening around them. So I think, and that's where, this sounds obvious, but I mean, again, getting out to even a 14-0 lead, a 10-0 lead, I do think that if you're able to successfully do that, if you're able to win the first quarter that way, I think things start to feel like a self-fulfilling prophecy on the Philadelphia side. And so if you can be perfect early on, it makes riding downhill a lot more smooth.
And on the flip side of things, what's the one thing the Philadelphia Eagles are going to need to hit on for a win against the Cowboys this week?
It sounds logical because it's kind of the opposite of that. But the reason the Cowboys not only lost, but got blown out by both Denver and Arizona is they failed to score points early on. Against Denver, Bo Nix had this gift of an interception to them, and they got down to the goal line and wanted to go for it, but had to settle for 3. And so at that point, it's just, you're bringing rocks to a gunfight or whatever. And against Arizona, they got down to the goal line and actually went for it on 4th down and failed to get any points. And so all of a sudden you put that first crack in the dam and everything kind of flows through. And so I think if Philly's able to, I think Dallas is way more likely to self-combust if they're down 10-0 than Philadelphia, to be very clear here. But that's how you put the Cowboys offense in a position where they have to be more aggressive than they'd like to be because they know they can't trust their defense, and everything works together that way.
Fantastic discussion, a fantastic preview show here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show. Again, folks, he is RJ Ochoa from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. My friend, always appreciate you taking the time to come on. Seriously, you're always generous with your time. Let's talk more football down the road. I'd love to have you back on the show, my friend.
I'd love to do it, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention, just for your audience's sake, that this is the first home game that the Cowboys are playing since the tragic passing of Marshawn Nealon. And so I imagine the broadcast will cover that at length, but it remains a highly emotional situation for the team. And given that it is their first home game right before the holidays, emotions are just all over in an understandable way, obviously. But if you're unaware as an audience member, as a listener of the show, obviously you're probably going to be exposed to that to some level.
All right. Very good. And you know what? Football is emotional in general from all sides of it. And I'd love to talk to you more about some NFL football, Cowboys, Eagles in the future, my friend. Come back and join us.
Anytime.